So that's it. I think we're going to have a Q&A now, right, Daniel? Have we got any time? Have I used all the time? Okay. Some questions, you think? Okay, you got questions. Okay, cool. Thank you. So I overran my time, I'm sorry.
This is it. Very traditional marketing.
Product placement.
Product placement. Thank you for the very instructive presentation. And I have only time to ask 3 questions, 3 short questions. You have published a new book called The Playground, The Business Playground, where creativity and commerce collide. Why do you think the world needs such a book? Another book about marketing and not an instruction video on YouTube or something like that?
I think it needs it needs this in lots of formats. I mean, I think we always need more stuff on creativity, because while there's some great stuff out there, and there's some books which I've read which I absolutely love about creativity and innovation. We're trying to do it from a slightly different viewpoint, which is that spirit of playfulness. And the book is meant to be inspiring and should make you feel creative, not just learn how other people do it, but also give a hands-on approach to actually being creative yourself. So, the book is the starting point, and we're obviously doing the iPad app, inevitably. There's inevitably the website. We're also trying to do a TV show around this, and there'll be other forms of this thing. The good thing about collaborating with a prolific musician like Dave Stewart is that he's a great photographer, and he's a filmmaker, and he's a musician, and we're going to have a bunch of other assets we can use in those other formats. So when we get the iPad app, there'll be music, there'll be video, there'll be photographs, there'll be these interactive games, which you can't do in a hard traditional thing like this book, but you can do in digital formats.
When you read this book, it seems a little bit like you want to say to us, be a little bit more emotional, colorful, something like this. This is very soft, and I like to quote from your, in contrast to this, I like to quote from your punk marketing manifesto. The first quote is, make enemies, not define enemies, as it was on the end of your presentation. And the second one is, don't be seduced to technology. It's very aggressive, the first impression when you read it is a very aggressive statement. And on the other hand, at the moment, Facebook turns, as a gold standard for a special kind of communication, Facebook turns from the button I'm a fan of to the button I like it. It's the same shift from a very neutral way to say I like it, to a very personal way, nearly to say I love it. And that's very soft also. So can you explain a little bit what the one side of your statement, which is very aggressive, punk marketing, and the other side of your statement, which is very smooth, soft, colorful, and emotional, how they fit together? How to come from one side to the other side?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that before. I think the reason is that punk marketing is meant to be start a conversation which we want people to reject almost. Not everyone to reject, but we want some reaction from that. So when we say make enemies, clearly it's an assertive, charged statement. And whereas define enemy sounds, as you say, a lot more gentle. But we wanted to shake things up a little bit. And the full title of that book is Punk Marketing, Get Off Your Arse and Join the Revolution. And you can imagine some of the publishers in the States didn't quite like that title, but they published it anyway to say, arse or ass is is going against the grain in the US. And we wanted to do that. And I think with this, with the creativity book, we wanted to make it a lot more playful. It's about that playful spirit that you have as kids. So some of the graphics are very cartoon-like, and the tone of voice is meant to be not quite so confrontational because of that. It's meant to get into that childlike way of thinking and spirit.
And the last question, how does your actual position as co-founder for useless.org fits into this strategy? Are you part of this, or is it part of this kind of strategy? You advise to others. you would also advise it to you yourself?
Right, so am I using my own advice?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think so. You know, there was a 2-minute film I could play on Useless if we've got time or not. Have we got time to do it? Okay. So Useless is a consumer brand that I co-founded just over a year ago, which is to help people use less and give more. And the intention behind it is to get people to rethink environmentalism and their role in consumerism. And I think what I found, and I worked with Al Gore for a while on his Alliance for Climate Protection, is that people take that stuff so seriously. And I'm a big believer in movements to reduce climate change, but it's become this worthy thing, you should do this, you must do this, you ought to do this. Whereas actually what I was trying to do with Useless was to say, you can do this, and there's a fun way of doing it. So we created a brand called Useless, which was very irreverent, to get people to think about their role as consumers in society. So to answer your question, Daniel, it's more about the process of what I did is redefine the enemy. And for me, the enemy was no longer about necessarily global warming, which I think was the natural enemy. The enemy was about being boring and not having a conversation about stuff, but actually trying to shake things up a little bit. And calling a brand useless, which is a negative thing, to have T-shirts saying useless on first blush seems like a stupid thing to say until you realize the story behind it, and actually it's saying, hey, we can all use less and take our role as consumers a little bit more responsibly and seriously, but do it in a fun way.
So thank you very much for this very instructive presentation and the wonderful short conversation. And I thank you for your attention. Okay, one question. If you have one question, that's the last one. Okay. Come to you.
Thanks a lot for the really very interesting and amusing, great presentation. And I fully agree also with the notion that we need creativity, absolutely. But there is an issue. I think people who are creative and who believe in this, they would love your book. But do you also offer some sort of recipe how to reach people who don't believe in creativity because they are so eager to secure their power position that they simply cannot afford to have creative people around them?
Oh, so you think there's a paranoia or sort of defensiveness about people who don't see themselves as creative? Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I don't know if the people who buy the book think of themselves already as creative. I suspect there is a little bit of that where it's speaking to an audience who's already sold on it, and I think there is a real need to broaden that message out to other people as well. I'm not sure we can do that alone, and I completely agree with your point that there are people who it is not in their interests for things to be shaken up. Companies are built on efficiency, and efficiency is the enemy of creativity in many ways. Like the ideal organization has both, but it's very tempting to go to the efficiency route. You learn how to do one thing well, and then you do it very, very, you cut things out and make it efficient. And that's slightly the enemy of creativity. And I think for people who run those companies, they don't want to hear much about it in organizations. So I don't have an answer, but I recognize the problem.
Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Yeah, it's 4:30.